먹어도 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un escalates the rhetoric against South Korea, defining Seoul as the main enemy, and adds that he has no intention of avoiding war. South Korea's presidential office appoints new personnel with the focus on bolstering the nation's economic security to better prepare for supply chain disruptions and economic challenges. The latest tech and gadgets are being unveiled at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. From future mobility powered by AI to advanced memory solutions, artificial intelligence dominates this year's event. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with North Korea's escalating rhetoric against South Korea. Kim Jong-un calls Seoul as the regime's main enemy, adding he has no intention of avoiding war. The South Korean government says they're an outdated tactic. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung takes a closer look at what's to come next.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has declared South Korea as the regime's main enemy and said he has no intention of avoiding war. This was said during his visit to munitions factories earlier this week, where he inspected what appeared to be missile vehicles for short-range ballistic missiles.
Declaring that the Republic of Korea is our main enemy, he said what we should focus on when it comes to the relations with a hostile state is to strengthen self-defense capabilities and nuclear war deterrence.
North Korea has called the South its main enemy a couple of times in the past, but this is the first time for Kim to directly declare South Korea as its principal enemy. Kim also threatened to, quote, completely destroy South Korea if it attempted to harm the regime's sovereignty and security. Seoul's Unification Ministry downplayed Kim's remarks as nothing more than an outdated tactic, saying that Kim had once again revealed his ambition to unify the two Koreas by force. It added that North Korea's emphasis on war preparations is evidence that it is fearful of Seoul and Washington's strengthening extended deterrence. The Foreign Ministry also denounced Kim's words, saying that South Korea has never initiated force against North Korea. However, concerns are growing as North Korea's provocations against the South do not seem to be stopping.
Looking at Kim's remarks, military tensions on the Korean peninsula are expected to increase significantly in 2024. We should expect a show of force when South Korea and the US conduct joint military exercises in March and August. We should also expect to see North Korea pressure the US at the highest level possible ahead of the US presidential election in November, causing tensions on the peninsula to escalate.
North Korea has recently been ramping up its hostility toward the South with artillery fire near the maritime border, following Kim's year-end statement defining the two Koreas as, quote, hostile nations at war with no chance of unification. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The top security chiefs of Seoul and Washington have reaffirmed their commitment to bolstering the bilateral alliance following North Korea's recent provocations and its military cooperation with Russia. According to South Korea's presidential office, the newly appointed National Security Advisor Jang Ho-jin held his first phone call with his U.S. counterpart Jake Sullivan on Wednesday. Jang expressed his willingness to further develop their global comprehensive strategic alliance in various fields, while Sullivan reportedly said he would like to further strengthen the strong ROK-US alliance this year. The two officials discussed North Korea's recent artillery firing into the West Sea and agreed that the regime's military collaboration with Moscow is a clear violation of Security Council resolutions. New personnel were appointed today to bolster the Yoon administration's economic security policies as the country looks to expand trade and diplomatic connections. Our Oh Soo-young has more on the reshuffle.
South Korea's top office named a new official in charge of economic security and a new trade minister as Seoul this year aims to ramp up its economic diplomacy. The presidential office on Wednesday announced the Yoon Suk-yeol administration's latest reshuffle of key government positions, beginning with the National Security Council. Incumbent Economic Security Secretary Wan Yoon-jong was appointed to take the newly established position of the third Deputy National Security Advisor, given his diverse experience in academia, economic research and the business community, handling trade relations with the US and China. His position will be filled by An Se-yeon, Professor of International Relations at the University of Seoul, known as an expert in global affairs and energy security. This comes after a series of new appointments made across the foreign affairs and trade ministries as key figures in the administration gear up to run for the April parliamentary elections. With a stronger focus on economic security, the administration has realigned its personnel to address new emerging challenges that affect the export-dependent country. It has cited supply chain disruptions and fierce global competition to master core technologies that ultimately determine both economic and military prowess. On that note, the president approved former ambassador to the United Nations Cho Tae-yeol as the new foreign minister, a day after Parliament adopted a confirmation report, a process required for ministerial positions. Yoon's office named former journalist and current Overseas Public Relations Secretary Kang In-sun as the second Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs, recognizing her familiarity with geopolitical affairs and public diplomacy. 3 other vice ministerial positions were also announced, including logistics and trade expert Jong In-kyo as the new trade minister to lead negotiations and resolve sticking points in trade, replacing An Deok-gun, who was recently promoted to Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy. Incumbent second Vice Minister Kang Kyung-sung, currently in charge of industrial policy, took the first Vice Minister position, with Ministry spokesperson Choi Nam-ho as his replacement. The top office on Wednesday also nominated Yoo Cheol-an, a former judge at the Seoul Central District Court, to lead the country's anti-corruption agency, which is a ministerial position requiring the National Assembly's approval. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
House prices and aging planned cities have been a hot topic in South Korea. As the second part of the new open discussion with citizens for the new year, President Yoon pledged that old regulations will be scrapped and that redevelopment will come sooner and easier. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Homes that citizens want. That was the second topic of the government's open debate on Wednesday with citizens and government officials. New year, new format, with the debate replacing the conventional briefings to the president by each ministry in January. There, President Yoon Suk-yeol promised that aging planned cities like Ilsan, Gyeonggi-do province, where the discussion was held, will be redeveloped before the end of his term.
우선 우리 정부는 재개발 재건축에 관한 규제를 아주 확 풀어버리겠습니다. 30년 이상 노후화된 주택은 안전진단 없이 바로 재건축에 착수할 수 있도록 하겠습니다.
This is because for an apartment to be reconstructed, it needs to fail a safety inspection. And as residents of old homes want them to be rebuilt, they want to fail. Other policies included expanding the floor ratio up to 500% and creating what's called Future City Fund for financing. He also addressed issues with multi-home ownership. Under the previous government, people with multiple homes were taxed heavily. The aim of this policy was to bring prices back down as South Korea's home prices skyrocketed in the early 2020s. President Yoon said such punitive taxing only shifted the burden to the tenants.
결국 그 피해를 서민들이 다 입게 됐습니다. 저희들은 이런 중과세를 철폐해서 서민들이 또 임차인들이 혜택을 입을 수 있도록 만들겠습니다.
He also underscored the importance of leaving politics and ideology out of the market. And when something is needed by the government, such as financing and relocation plans, that's when it acts. At the discussion were around 50 ordinary citizens, such as residents of homes that are in need of reconstruction, newlyweds, and young people looking to buy their first home to share their views on housing. In the meantime, he also took time to visit a 33-year-old apartment block in Ilsan. According to the top office, the apartment complex wasn't able to be rebuilt despite its nearly crumbling state due to current regulations. While looking around to check for what's needed when the redevelopment kicks off, President Yoon promised the residents there that a speedy process is on its way. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the job front, the country recorded the highest employment rate last year, but the rebound was driven mostly by those aged 60 and above. Our Park Gun-woo has more.
South Korea's latest employment figures have been published and are showing positive signs. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, a total of 327,000 jobs were added on year in 2023, which was actually a drop from the year before. But that was mainly due to the base effect, as the jobs market recovered in 2022 following the easing of COVID-19 restrictions. 816,000 jobs were added that year. The employment rate for those aged 15 and above in 2023 rose 0.5 percentage points compared to the year before, to 62.6%, a record high since data was first compiled in 1963. An official from Statistics Korea said reduced COVID-19 restrictions increased demand, including at cafes and restaurants, while the need for caregivers, especially for seniors after the pandemic, helped to boost employment figures. By industry, sectors including the accommodation and food service sectors saw jumps in employment of around 11,000 after COVID-19 measures were eased last year. But the manufacturing and wholesale and retail fields saw employment figures drop due to shrinking exports and more online transactions, respectively. Those aged 60 and above saw the biggest increase in job additions, with 366,000 added, while the number of people in that age group working passed 6 million for the first time last year.
More people aged 60 and above and higher demand for employees in that age group in the health and welfare industry are factors behind job additions in the age group.
She added that despite fewer additions for people in their 20s, the employment rate for young adults was quite high, considering population decline in that age group. Meanwhile, 285,000 jobs were added in December 2023 alone, a rebound from November when the on-month numbers fell. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
The World Bank projects global economic growth this year will slow further to mark a third year of weak expansion. Lee Seung-jae explains.
In its latest Global Economic Prospects report released on Tuesday, the World Bank says global GDP is likely to grow 2.4% in 2024, slowing for a third year in a row. The latest forecast follows 6.2% growth in 2021, 3% in 2022, and 2.6% in 2023. The World Bank cited poverty and debilitating debt levels in many developing countries for the latest forecast. It also said that excluding the pandemic contraction in 2020, growth this year is set to be the weakest since the global financial crisis of 2009. It also added that due to the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and ensuing spikes in inflation and interest rates around the world, the first half of the 2020s is expected to be the worst half-decade performance in 30 years. Speaking to reporters, World Bank Deputy Chief Economist Ian Coase said global growth for 2020 to 2024 period would be weaker than the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, the Asian financial crisis of the late 1990s, and downturns in the early 2000s. Moving forward, the World Bank expects global growth in 2025 to rise to 2.7%, marked down from a June forecast of 3% due to anticipated slowdowns among advanced economies. Major economies around the world are also expected to see their growth slow, with the U.S. forecast to grow 1.6%, down from 2.5% last year, while China is also expected to see growth slow 4.5%, down from 5.2% last year. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now in Las Vegas, the latest tech and gadgets are being unveiled at the Consumer Electronics Show. From future mobility powered by AI to advanced memory solutions, artificial intelligence dominates this year's event. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
The world's largest annual tech show is back again. The 2024 edition of the Consumer Electronics Show, organized by the Consumer Technology Association in Las Vegas, commenced on Tuesday. As widely acknowledged, the key word of this year's CES is artificial intelligence integrated across a variety of industries.
With generative AI in the last year since it's come about, there's a lot of very rapid developments, companies going into new areas. It's like the internet itself. It's not just a technology, it's a fundamentally game-setting, changing technology.
LG Electronics believes AI should bring better customer experience that is more caring.
We all know AI stands for artificial intelligence, but at LG, we would like to redefine it as affectionate intelligence.
With over 400 exhibitors showcasing their latest breakthroughs in vehicle technology, the spotlight at the trade show is on future mobility powered by AI. South Korea's Hyundai Motor Group is participating on its largest scale ever, with both Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors making a noteworthy return after being absent the previous year. Hyundai Motor highlighted its commitment to leading human-centric life innovations. To do so, the company introduced its hydrogen value chain solution covering production, storage, transportation, and utilization. It has also announced its software-defined everything strategy, aiming to establish a mobility ecosystem that caters to users' needs anytime and anywhere through advanced software and AI. With an aim to go beyond the traditional concept of automobiles, Kia Motors unveiled its Platform Beyond Vehicle, or PBV for short, which can be turned into a delivery vehicle or a private office based on users' needs. Meanwhile, South Korea's second-largest conglomerate SK Group built a theme park at CES to highlight how technology can be applied to improve the world and address global challenges such as achieving net zero. One of its affiliates, SK Hynix, showcased advanced memory solutions that support generative AI applications. The 4-day event will run until Friday local time, bringing a diverse array of changes driven by AI to be used in daily life. 신하영, Arirang News.
The U.S. company that hoped to mark America's first private-led moon mission now says its lunar lander is unlikely to carry out its landing mission because of fuel leak. Yoon tells us more.
U.S. robotics firm Astrobotic has announced that its Peregrine lunar lander has no chance of a soft landing after a serious fuel leak about 7 hours after its launch. The moon mission was the first of its kind for a private U.S. company. But following its successful launch on Monday from Cape Canaveral, Florida, where the lunar lander successfully separated from the rocket, Astrobotic soon reported a propulsion system malfunction on the lander, which now has no hope left for success. Peregrine was attempting to become the first U.S. spacecraft to land on the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. Meanwhile, NASA announced during a news conference on Tuesday that its Artemis program, which aims to return astronauts to the moon this decade, is facing some lengthy delays. The Artemis 3 mission to land humans on the moon for the first time since the Apollo program was previously set to complete this milestone by 2025. But it is now expected to not happen until at least September 2026. The space agency said that the primary reason for the delay includes 2 failed test flights in 2023. The tests in 2023 of Starship, which is the spacecraft that is expected to take astronauts from lunar orbits to the moon's south pole, both ended in explosions. Yoon, Arirang News.
Shifting gears, the American and British navies have repelled the largest attack ever by Yemen's Houthi rebels, targeting commercial shipping lanes in the Red Sea. According to the U.S. Central Command on Tuesday, no injuries or damage were reported. The Associated Press reported that the attacks by Iran-backed Houthis came before a planned UN Security Council vote later on Wednesday to possibly condemn and demand an immediate halt to the attacks by the rebels. The Houthis have been saying that their attacks are aimed at stopping Israel's war on Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Israel's counteroffensive against the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah has led to the death of the group's drone unit commander. Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
The Israel Defense Forces said on Tuesday that they killed a commander of the militant group Hezbollah's drone unit. IDF spokesperson Dania Hagari said they killed Ali Hussein Bouzi, who had led drone attacks on northern Israel. Hagari mentioned that the attack was a targeted drone strike on a vehicle by Israeli air forces. On Monday, a senior commander of Hezbollah's secretive Radwan force, Wasim al-Tawil, was killed in an Israeli airstrike. Meanwhile, International Organization for Migration reported on Tuesday that more than 76,000 residents in southern Lebanon have fled the area as the tensions are increasing between Hezbollah and Israel. UK newspaper The Guardian has reported that hundreds of refugees are arriving every day in Lebanon's southern coastal city of Tyre, with fears of a possible recurrence of the conflict between Israel and Lebanon in 2006. Amid the growing conflicts, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting the Middle East. In a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Blinken emphasized avoiding further civilian harm in Gaza. He also stated that the U.S. will stand with Israel, but called for aid to Gaza and fewer civilian losses.
This immense human toll is one of the many reasons that we continue to stand with Israel in ensuring that October 7th can never happen again. It's also why we're intensely focused on bringing the remaining hostages home, addressing the humanitarian crisis, and strengthening protection for civilians in Gaza, and preventing the conflict from spreading.
Blinken's visit to the Middle East is his fourth since the current conflict between Israel and Hamas militant group broke out in October. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
To K-pop news now. The album Golden by BTS member Jong-un has stayed in the US Billboard 200 chart for longer than any other K-pop solo album. In the chart's latest update on Tuesday local time, Golden ranked 28th, now spending its 9th consecutive week on Billboard's main albums chart. His bandmate V set the previous record of 8 weeks last year with his album Layover. The Billboard 200 chart ranks the week's most popular albums in the US based on album sales and online streaming.
Snow and rain have stopped in most places. However, uninvited smoke from overseas has flowed in behind the snow clouds. Tomorrow, the Seoul metropolitan area, as well as the Chungcheongdo and Jeollado provinces, are expected to have bad level of ultrafine dust. Other areas are expected to have normal levels. However, Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do province will temporarily see bad levels of ultrafine dust in the morning. Wearing an ultrafine dust mask is very important. Tomorrow night, snow or rain will make a return in Gangwon-do province. For the time being, there will be no severe cold beyond the usual temperatures. However, roads will be slippery due to the frozen snow and rain. Please continue to be careful out on the roads. Morning temperatures will hover around the seasonal average. Seoul will start off at -4, along with Daejeon and Gyeongju. Highs in Seoul will get up to 5 degrees, Gyeongju and Busan 10 degrees Celsius. On Sunday, rain or snow will appear in the center part of the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that's all for this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI headline news. Good night.